Welcome to the official YouTube channel of TI Montessori of Meadowood. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe. And also, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Montessori Materials Presentation. First, let's talk about number rods. Here are our objectives of the number rods. First, to learn sets 1 to 10 as a fixed quantity or whole quantities. For example, 2 as a whole. Second, in preparation for understanding of the sequence of numbers 1 to 10. Third, awareness of the quantitative relationship between numbers. For example, 2 is more than 1, 3 is more than 2, etc. Fourth, to introduce the verbal number names and their quantities from 1 to 10. Fifth, to introduce the operation of addition. Sixth, to introduce the commutative property of addition. And lastly, to develop the concept of equation. Presentation 1. Teacher then shows how to arrange the rods. This is a sensorial activity. Here, the longest rod is presented first while tracing the whole length of the rod with the index and middle fingers from left to right. This is to show to the child how long the rod is. Presentation 2. Naming each rod with the numeral cards. The numeral cards associate the numbers to the corresponding rod. We also name each rod according to its number name. Presentation 3. Making 10 activity. With the 10th rod as the reference, teacher will get rod 8 and put it right next to rod 10 for an easy comparison. Next, teacher will ask the child what rod to get to make the length equal to rod 10. Then the child will try to compare one rod after the other to be able to make a perfect match, in this case, rod 2. Presentation 4. Addition using the number rods. Teacher may prepare problem cards for the child to use. Write in strips of paper the plus and equal signs to use. For this lesson, our vocabulary: long, short. And now let's move on to sandpaper numerals. The objectives of sandpaper numerals. Learn to count from 1 to 10. To introduce the symbols and then the vocabulary for the numerals 1 to 10. Indirect preparation for writing by showing the child how to trace the sandpaper numerals. And lastly, same purpose as in the number rods. Presentation of numbers by threes. Place the material on the table. Teacher must then point and read the numbers. Note, the numerals 1 to 10 are introduced in stages, with 3 cards at a time. For example, teacher will introduce 1, 2, and 3. And for the second time, 3, 4, and 5, and so on. Using the index and middle fingers, trace each number the way it should be written while saying the number. Okay, let's create our own sandpaper numerals. Cut the sandpaper into numbers and paste them on a thick green board for the child to practice at home. The number size should be enough for the two little fingers to trace to properly feel the texture of the number traced. Note: reserve a space here if the child is right-handed. Otherwise, reserve space at the right of the board. And now, our vocabulary for this topic. Rough, smooth, our next topic is spindle box. Here are our objectives of the spindle box. First, to learn the numbers in sequence. Second, to provide practice in counting. Third, to learn the concept of zero as an empty set. Fourth, to gain independence, concentration, and sense of accurateness. And lastly, to reinforce the child's understanding of number names, numerals, symbols, and quantities. Presentation of spindles. Presentation 1. The number sequence as dictated by the box. Teacher points and reads the numbers at the back of the box, starting from 0 to 9, and the child repeats after her. At the 0 compartment, teacher now introduces 0 as an empty set. The teacher takes one spindle and says 1. Then he or she places it in the compartment numbered 1. She repeats the same for 2 and 3. The child should hold the corresponding number of spindles in her hand first before placing them in the corresponding compartment. The growing number of the spindles in the child's hand as the number increases gives the child the idea of how many or how few a number is. Example: if the child needs to put 5 spindles in the compartment, he or she must count 5 spindles into her hand before placing all 5 spindles in compartment 5. And now let's make our own spindle box. Parent may use popsicle sticks in lieu of the spindles. Label the 10 boxes from 0 to 9 to place the popsicle sticks counted. Vocabulary: 0. And now let's move on to numbers and counters. Objectives of numbers and counters. To learn the numbers in sequence. To provide practice in counting. To gain independence, concentration, and sense of accurateness. To reinforce the child's understanding of number names, numerals, or symbols and quantities. To introduce the concept of odd and even. And lastly, an indirect preparation for divisibility of numbers. Presentation 1. Arrange the numbers with their corresponding number of counters. On the mat, put the numbers and their corresponding quantity of counters. Arrange the counters as presented below. Example: number 1, then 1 counter. Number 2, then 2 counters. Presentation 2. Determine the odd and even numbers. Separate the numbers with counters in partners from the numbers with an excess of 1 counter. Okay, so now it's time for DIY of numbers and counters. Write numerals 1 to 10 in a board. Then, cut red board as counters. And lastly, Use soda cups in lieu of the counters and draw numbers on the board. Vocabulary: we had odd and even. Thank you for watching. If this video helped you in any way, please leave a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel for more educational content.